Hi, I'm Sandra. I facilitate the memoir writing for seniors program at the Powell River Library. Today's short memoir is written by Rosemary Hawkins. She took the memoir writing course at the library in 2017. At the age of 87 is when she started writing her memoirs so that her 24 great-grandchildren could know her stories. Very quickly after Rosemary began writing her stories, her fan base expanded to well beyond her family. One of her memoirs about her early days in Vancouver was featured on a Vancouver news station. And another of her memoirs about love and marriage was published in the Power of Living magazine. The story I'm reading to you today was published in a memoir anthology that we published through the library in 2018 called Turning Points. So all of the stories have to do with memoirs of people's turning points in their lives. So this is a turning point for Rosemary, and it's called My First Road Trip. In 1950, at the age of 20, I worked in Vancouver and rented a room in the home of a young family. They'd been experiencing tough times, layoffs and shortage of money, and as a result, their 1936 baby Austin was going to be repossessed. I knew nothing about cars or how to drive one, but Charlie, my landlord, offered me a deal. $200 and he'd throw in driving lessons. I accepted, despite the fact that it was uncommon for women to drive, let alone own a car. I went to the license bureau that was down near the entrance to Stanley Park. They checked my car, and we went for a ride. "Let me see you park on a hill," the man said near the end of the drive. I had to admit I was not very good at this. "Okay, time for a lesson," he said, and he gave me one. After that, we returned to the license bureau, and I proudly received my driver's license. 6 weeks after I got my license, my two brothers, aged 15 and 12, came from Powell River to visit me. I'd promised them a road trip up Vancouver Island and then back over to Powell River. We drove onto the CPR steamer successfully in Vancouver and set sail. I was feeling more and more confident in my car. Alas, when we disembarked in Victoria, my little beast of a car hopped up on the wharf to the main street and landed right in front of the tally-ho horse and buggy. I couldn't figure out why the car wasn't running smoothly. I was terribly nervous and embarrassed, which didn't help. It took a while to figure out that I had had the emergency brake on, and it needed to be released. I managed to pull over and play with all the knobs, and by sheer luck, turned the right one, and all was well. Off we went. The roads at that time weren't what they are today. In fact, they were pretty rough, so it was a real challenge for my little car to climb the Malahat, but we made it up, slowly. I'd spent my money buying the car, gas, and paying for the ferry fare, so we would have to camp and eat wieners, beans, and fruit on this journey. We found a picnic site at Kai Bay and settled in, walked the beach, and made plans for overnight. My youngest brother got to sleep on the back seat, and my other brother and I sat up front. After darkness set in, we heard noisy laughter. It was a group of fellows coming for a swim. They presumed my car was an abandoned wreck, and much to my horror, proceeded to disrobe and throw their clothes on my car. I whispered to my brother that when they got in the water, he was to hop out and throw their clothes in the bushes and then jump in quickly so we could make our escape. Thankfully, the car started and we were off again. I could only imagine those unhappy, shivering bodies looking for their clothes in the pitch black. When we were far away, we laughed and laughed. When our island adventures were behind us, we headed to Comox to catch the boat home to Powell River. The wharf extended far out to accommodate the large CPR boats that arrived, and to prevent people from driving too fast and going over the end. On that day, the tide was out and the ramp was at a sharp grade. I asked one of the crew if he'd drive my car on, and he cheerfully agreed. Later, as we strolled around the deck, that crewman called me over. "You might have warned me that your car has poor brakes," he said. "I almost went over the damned side." I meekly said I was sorry, without admitting that I hadn't known. We arrived in Powell River at the mill dock and faced our next challenge, another steep hill to climb. My poor little beast panted its way up past the mill workers walking with their lunch buckets heading to work. They watched in amusement with big grins and waves at the sight of such a little car crawling valiantly up to the top. We made it, safe and sound, my first road trip complete, and I'm still driving 67 years later. So that's a story by Rosemary Hawkins, written at the age of 88. She recently celebrated her 90th birthday. And one of the last times I saw Rosemary, she told me another car story. She had unfortunately somehow driven off the side of Willingdon Beach Road and ended up in a bit of a ditch. But it was a wonderful story with a happy ending when she somehow got pulled out through the window of her car by a handsome stranger. So she's still driving, she's still writing, and she's still sharing her stories. Thanks for sharing this one with me today. Have a good day.